Okay, let's just get into it. So the biggest misconception about making a bowl is that you need to make it a bowl when you first start. But like with any other shape, what you want to do is you want to create the foundation of your pot, which is your walls. You want to determine how thick those walls are going to be, how high your pot's going to be, all of that before you turn it into a bowl. So you don't want to scream, hey, I'm making a bowl, with that very first pull. So as a beginner, you're able to really support a lot of clay underneath your walls. Once you get more advanced, you'll be able to start with a more narrow mound of clay. But if I'm going to make a bowl this big, I don't want to start with a mound of clay this narrow, because as I start to pull out, if I'm not really good in the beginning, those walls are going to start to fall. So we're going to start with it a little wider to give ourselves some support under those walls, just in case we yell bowl a little too soon. So I'm going to start sort of with this disc. Now, how do you know it's centered? I tend to just draw a line on my bat like that. Try and make sure that that circle is maintaining steady rotation. So after a little bit of struggle with some air bubbles that I just quickly got rid of, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna open up. Now, when I make a bowl, I like to have a real good foot on my bowl. What that's gonna do is gonna give me some negative space underneath the bowl so I can see that it's a bowl and not a cylinder. So people always underestimate the size of a foot. I like to make it about 3/4 of an inch from the bottom. And the reason why is not only am I going to allow for the foot, but I'm also going to allow for the wall of my pot, so that when I trim all this off, there's still some room there, so that it's evenly consistent with the walls. So I'm about 3/4 of the way down. Now I'm going to pull straight towards my left palm with several fingers, and I'm going to pull straight towards me for where the food's going to sit, and then I'm going to scoop. I'm going to have a little bit of a rounded bottom as compared to a cylinder where I would have just aimed for a right angle. Now, notice what I did with my left hand. I allowed my left thumb to get in there so I can use the side of my finger to compress my lip. Now, a lot of people get disturbed by all of the marks, so I'm going to compress my floor. I'm not going to compress my floor a lot with a bowl, not until the end. The more that you wipe with your sponge, the more the clay comes off, but the grog stays. And then in the end, your grog is going to shrink at a lesser rate than your clay. So you're going to wonder why you're so rough and groggy down on the bottom, and it's because the grog sticks up more than the clay once the pot's been fired. So I try and maintain I try not to compress my floor too much until I'm at the end to get that water out. So now again, my wheel was going super fast, and now I'm going to start to slow down. Okay, so hopefully from this angle you can see a little better. So the first thing I'm going to do is my corrective pull. I'm going to make my walls even. So less pressure there, more pressure here, and less pressure here, so that my walls are evenly consistent. Now when I start with a bowl, I'll start with my inside hand sort of in the center, and as I start to scoop, I'll wait until my hands meet where I'm going to start to pull. So again, I'm going to do a lot of pressure here and almost no pressure here. What that's going to do is it's going to make it so that I don't have to care about thick and thin anymore. Right now, from here to here is about consistent thickness. I'm on a main street here in Madison, New Jersey, so firemen, cops, ambulances. So I'm going to start down here on the bottom again. I'm going to push in with my right hand to scoop up that clay. And again, notice that I'm going up. I'm going a little bit out. I'm insinuating that it's going to be a bowl, but I'm not quite yelling at a bowl. What's really important to a bowl is that you keep your lip thick. This thick rim of clay is going to support your walls and your shape. Visualize a bucket. that bucket of that maybe you're using for your water has a thicker rim on the top. That design is there so that it supports the sides of your walls. We know that when that bucket cracks, the walls are not as strong. So I'm gonna slow down my wheel a little bit more. I'm gonna scoop from the bottom. I wanna make it thinner on the bottom. Lots of pressure, a little bit more pressure on my inside hand to make it a little bit of a bowl. And now when I say thicker lip, that doesn't mean I just take my hands off. It means I continue the pull, I just put less pressure. So it's not a lot thicker, it's maybe about a third thicker than the rest of my wall. And I'm gonna try and get one more pull out of this. I'm gonna try and get this clay down here into that pot. So what I'm actually doing is I'm not bringing this clay and bringing it up here. What I'm doing is I'm jacking up this with this. So as I put more pressure down on the bottom, equal pressure on the inside, what I'm doing is I'm just shoving some clay underneath this wall to make this taller. There's no way of really bringing this clay up here. At the same time, I'm gonna insinuate bowl a little bit more. Now when I'm making a bowl, I tend to have my head all the way on the side, especially when I do my next pull, because I want to be able to see the profile. Another way you can see what's going on out here is by looking on the inside. If you see that it's not smooth transition, you'll know where to put more pressure and less pressure. So now I'm going to go ahead and get the water out of the inside of my bowl, sort of make sure that that rounded bottom is still round. Now, the inside is what we really care about. The outside, remember, we're gonna be able to trim a lot of this out. So as a beginner, I'm able to leave a decent amount of clay here to support these walls. If this went all the way in, if I played with it too much, this would start to droop down. So now I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna do what I call a shaping pull. Now I can do that with my hands. I can start on the bottom and literally just support, put my sponge where I want that to end up, push up against the sponge and start to go up. But a slightly more advanced way is to use a rubber rib. So I'm a fan of the rubber ribs, the Kemper hard ones. It's gonna give me a little bit more support. I wish it had a hole in it. There are some that have holes in them, but they tend to be a little thinner. So I have the bevel of it facing me. I'm holding it with my non-dominant hand. And what I'm gonna actually do is I'm gonna start at the top. You may not have seen this before, but I believe this is the best way to do this. I'll explain more in the bit. So I'm gonna put my sponge all the way out here because this is where I want my lip to end up. And remember, I kept that lip thick, so if I stretch it, it won't get too thin. And I'm gonna slowly, gradually going down. And as I start to go down, I'm gonna put a decent amount of pressure. And when I get to the bottom, I'm gonna notice I'm gonna be able to put a lot of pressure. So here we go. Elbows down on my legs at all times. My head's coming down on the bottom here so I can see what I'm doing. And I'm gonna literally stretch that bowl into the shape that I want it to be. Now, although when I get to the bottom, there's nothing really supporting my rib hand, the base of the clay is. Now, why did I start at the top? Well, on the top, you're able to put, let's just throw a number out there, 30 pounds of pressure. But on the bottom, you're able to put, let's say, 60 pounds of pressure. If we start at the bottom doing 60 pounds of pressure, by the time we hit this part and we realize that we have to lessen up that pressure, it's probably too late. Your wall probably went like this already. But if we start at the top, we could put that 30 pounds of pressure, and then by the time we realize we could put more, you can add more pressure without it affecting this part of your bowl. So what I was aiming for is this sort of roundish, half a sphere bowl. So there's lots of different bowls. You watch some of my other videos, we talk about fruit bowl, ramen noodle bowl, salad bowl, and they all have different purposes. To me, what makes something a bowl is this rounded inside as compared to the cylinder that's square. Now what we want to care about is that rounded inside. We want to make sure that we get a smooth transition. This is sort of your visual on a bowl. Now, I do not like to just leave my lip kind of starkly cut off like that. I always like to give it some sort of tension between the table and the lip. I want to almost create this as my focal point. So I'm going to put my right finger a little bit lower than my left, and I'm just going to create a little bit of a visual line here. Because I bite my nails, I tend to have my own my own decorating tools attached to my fingers in the forms of cuticles and nails. All right, so now I'm gonna call that a bowl. So as you can see, I didn't tell this clay it was gonna be a bowl until close to the end. Now when I cut out a cylinder, I usually hold this way and I usually go straight down. I can't do that, there's a bowl in the way. So I'm gonna turn my tool slightly towards me so the blade is facing me, but it's still facing up. Hold it with my left hand on top, elbows around my legs, and I just wanna clean off that extra and come out. The reason why I'm cleaning off that extra is that maybe you have a thin lip, maybe you have a thin bottom. If you leave that 1.5 inches of clay on the bottom, it's gonna dry a lot slower. And then when your other parts start to dry, it's gonna shrink and it's gonna crack. All right, there we go. One of the pro tips I always try and do is always try and clean my bat. My wheel's not going super fast, but I want this bowl to start drying so that I can get it off the bat. So I wanna create a dry atmosphere. By having a wet, messy bat, you're slowing down that drying process. And there you go. Good luck, guys.